Hey, 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 Mom Nation, and welcome back to another episode of Live and Learn. And we have a returning guest today who I am very excited to chat about. And I know that you guys are just chomping at the bit to dive into this topic because it is affecting a lot of us mamas out there. We have Jeanine. She is a courtroom readiness and mindset coach. Welcome back, Jeanine.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be back. I love our talks.
Me too. And they're always like such hot button topics too. Things that are relevant, things that are current, things that are happening now to mamas and women out there. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being in support of women, and thank you for what you do. So real quick, can you just give us a brief synopsis before we start diving in the meat and potatoes of this topic here of who you are and why you're so good at this?
Yeah, thank you. I will say anyone who saw the previous recording would be like, isn't this the relationship coach? And yes, I am. I have, we talked about that on our last Live and Learn, but I'm also a courtroom readiness and mindset coach. And essentially, I help women and men prepare for these really high stake moments in their lives. So preparing emotionally and mentally for court, deposition, mediation. Those are really high stress times where people tend to revert back to patterns and are activated by old triggers and can show up in these spaces or rather leave these spaces feeling like they wish they had been able to show up differently. And so that's the work that I do with the courtroom readiness and mindset coaching. I'm actually a divorced mother of 4 children. I was married for 20 years and I went through a divorce, 6 years ago. And it was during that process that I really relied on these tools. So I have been practicing for over 15 years, supporting women navigating major life changes through a variety of skills and tools. I am a subconscious reprogramming specialist. I am a Karuna Reiki master, which comes into the energetic aspect of mind, body, and soul. And I have developed these practical tools to help people anchor in the moment. And I utilize them, and it was game-changing throughout my experience and something that I really want to share with other people too.
I love that.
Yeah, sorry.
Again,
so I partner with law firms and work directly with their clients.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being in support of those that are going through this, because as you know, I specialize in divorcing couples with real estate assets, and almost always the conversation, when you're having a conversation with somebody about something so intimate, like, the biggest purchase of their life, the biggest asset of their life, that kind of thing, emotions naturally play into this. And so I often have, it becomes part of the conversation. I've got to, write out my list of things, before you go into mediation or before you go talk with an attorney. You always create, like I did for my divorce. And I often will suggest to my people, just create, kind of the list of what you want, how you want things to go. That in and of itself can be a very nerve-wracking experience, let alone getting in front of somebody like a mediator or an attorney, or talking child parenting time, like who's going to go where. Like this is all super stressful, not to mention the emotional side of things that are playing into it, because you're essentially grieving a loss.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you're in this moment where you're still in that transition of life is not turning out the way I expected it to, planned it to do, necessarily wanted it to. And now I'm faced with making all these major life choices that impact, like you said, child custody and every aspect of your life. And as every stressful time does, it's the perfect opportunity to have activations and triggers surface fairly uncontrollably when we're in those high stress moments.
Can you explain a bit, if you can, why that happens? Why, when we're feeling stressed, does our kind of like lizard brain take over?
Sure. Well, I try to explain it this way. In a nutshell, we are currently living in the past. And people look at me like, what are you talking about? I'm planning ahead. I'm thinking of the future. It's like, you are, but you're viewing your entire world through the lens of the past. Because ever since you were a child, you developed perceptions and understandings of the way you were going to be treated, received, react, the way you're going to perform in life. And those lenses develop the belief systems that we have that we live out today. So I am worthy, I don't have a voice, I am strong, I am weak, whatever it is that we believe, those are the subconscious programs that are playing. And it is it's pretty profound for a lot of people when they recognize, oh, wow, I am living out these stories that I've been telling myself. And so when we are in these high stress moments, innately we go back to what is comfortable. And what is comfortable is not necessarily what feels good, but it is what's familiar. And so if you've been living in a loop, we have to figure out how to break that loop so that you can be in the present moment and grounded so that you can react and respond. You can respond rather versus react. But when we're dysregulated in any way, we are going to revert back to that patterning. There's a lot of identity patterning work that I do with clients, help them understand, okay, what are I'm jumping ahead a bit here. Is this all right?
That's okay.
Keep
Go with
going.
your flow, girl.
Yeah. So I work with a lot of people and they're like, I don't understand. I know exactly what I want before I get into the room. But as soon as I see my ex's face, I can't speak. I can't get the words out. Yeah.
Right.
Well, so we talk about that. So I work with women particularly for a 5-week period in preparation of the event. And in 5 weeks, we're not going to unravel 30 years of patterning.
Right.
So with this particular focus, what we're looking at is what are the major activators, and how do we kind of dull those? So if that's a sharp knife, his look, and you're going voiceless, how do we dull that knife? Well, we first have to get into understanding why you believe you have no voice in that moment. And how do we work with that identity patterns so that you can walk in instead of activating like, I don't have a voice, I can't speak, I was never listened to, I was never heard. You're not living in the past anymore. You're living in the present moment, and you are vocalizing what you need from a more grounded place. And there's a lot of tools that go into that. So understanding a bit about the why, how to shift it in today. We're not doing therapy. We're not diving into the problems and understanding and processing trauma. That's for a therapist. We're taking the way those experiences have activated in your life today, and how do we take that today and move forward? And so instead of reciting, so it's activating at the root. And I'm sorry, I keep saying activating. It's rewiring at the root. A lot of times people say, well, I will recite this mantra that says, I can speak clearly, I can speak clearly. And mantras, I have maybe not a popular belief on mantras. I say, if you feel the affirmation, you can create the change. But if you're repeating somebody else's words because they sound good or you read it in a book, it does not hit you emotionally and energetically. And so you're really just reading a book. And some people it works. If they say it long enough, they begin to believe it. But what we really want to do is get in there and find out, what can we tweak so that you can feel the reality that you want to create, which is, I have a voice, I know what I need and what I want, and know what's best for my children, and work from that space. I kind of jumped around a bit there, but I think you get the idea that it's multi-level. And then there's just emotional regulation in the moment. And so I do a lot of that with them too. What tips and tricks can you use in the moment to bring yourself back to that space? Because we are drawn outside of ourselves when we're in conflict and high stress. And what I mean by that is, when we're clear, we're in a grounded space because we're listening to ourselves, we're tapping into our own intuition, we're listening to what we believe to be true, correct? And we're living from the inside out. When we're pushed into in these high stakes situations where we're feeling off center, we're living outside, and a lot of the information is coming around us, and we're taking people's opinions and perspectives, and we're responding and reacting to the way people look and respond to us, and it becomes very disconnected. So bringing yourself back into center and being able to respond from the inside out is one of the tools that I teach people.
Do you have any specific examples that you'd be willing to share with our audience, like one or two?
Yeah, absolutely. This one I actually mentioned, I have done a post on this. So It goes into much more detail about how this process works, but it's really, really simple. And it's something that I teach. I think I've taught every client for the last 15 years because it can be used in any circumstance. And it's pretty interesting if you think about how it works. I want you to tap. You can do it right now too. So right below your, I call it the horseshoe, but it's definitely not called that. But now that I have it in my brain.
That isn't the
So
scientific term.
Exactly. And you're going to tap fairly firmly. And inhale and exhale just for a minute. And then on the next inhale, as you exhale, I want you to say, that's not my story. And you can say it in your head or you can say it out loud. That's not my story. And I say it 3 times. And what this does, whether it is your story or not, like some people will come back and say, but that actually is my story. It's like, I don't care. What you're doing is you're interrupting that cognitive loop that says, that's not my story. So the brain like resets a little bit. And tapping the heart is tapping your heart chakra, which connects the mind-body energy. And so you're bringing awareness to your physical body with the tapping, and then you're simultaneously interrupting that cognitive loop. So this is successful if anyone is feeling anxiety, anxious, nervousness, feeling out of their body a little bit. It's really, and you focus, it's not just hey, that's not my story. You're focusing on the tapping and you're saying the words and you're feeling it. You're almost, you can do it. When you do it, you can actually eliminate outside noise. It's a moment of bringing yourself inside yourself. That's not my story.
Mm-hmm.
It is really a very successful tool. And I laugh because I've taught, as I said, everyone, and then I'll come home. I'm visiting family now, and sometimes I'll in the kitchen, and everyone's like, "Wait a minute, what happened? What did we say to trigger you?" It's really just it's an effective tool.
Tell me, and I appreciate that, and that I could almost even just demonstrating it with you, not in a stressful state, I could feel that energy shift. So thank you. But why doesn't it work to like just stay calm?
Oh, just to stay calm?
Yeah, why can't we just stay calm in these moments? You know what I'm saying? Like, how people will do that. Just calm down.
Right.
Okay, why can't we?
A lot of people hear that. They're like, well, just breathe. Or just be calm. It'll be fine. And your system does not listening to that. Your system's not hearing that. And saying I'm calm or repeating a mantra that isn't, connected, creates, if anything, it'll create a performative calm. And so we want to get to an embodied calm. The difference between performative would be performing, right? You said, stay calm, I'll be calm, stay calm, I'll be calm. It doesn't actually get under the skin. An embodied calm is when you can go into that deeper level of understanding of yourself. And that's where we have to address those shifts. And I do that also through pretty targeted coaching and direct. I'm a fairly direct individual, so we'll get to the meat of things pretty quickly.
So what does it typically look like when, say, you're starting to talk with somebody new and they're just beginning this journey? Maybe they haven't even spoken to the attorney or the mediator, whatever it is yet. And how that moment or those many moments are just so overwhelming.
Yeah.
Is there any sort of tactic or technique to help with that initial overwhelm that you guide your clients through? Because I've been there and it felt to me like I couldn't even make a decision at all. Like I didn't even know what was good for me at that point.
Yes. When you're in that state where there's very little clarity, the first thing I recommend people do is to try to calm their system. And it's a hard thing for people to hear in the moment, but getting out of 2 places. And again, you're dealing with someone who is going through a divorce. There's anger, there's sadness, there's grief. There are all these really incredibly powerful emotions. It is very difficult, but to be able to focus on the end goal, which would not necessarily be the end goal of how you want to live your life, but it is how to get through this transition. If you have children, how do you get through the transition the easiest possible way for the kids? Nobody wins in a divorce, right? Even if you're both amicable, really, there's no winners in a divorce. And control is rampant, right? When we are in a fear state and panic takes over, when we try to control the outcome, whether it's what our lawyers say, how they say it, who they say it to, what we say, what we want, all of those bits of trying to control every aspect is this false sense of security in a time where you are invariably feeling very unsettled. So my first suggestion to people is to try to take a walk outside. Try to ground yourself for a moment in nature. Try to bring yourself back to this present moment. And then start to think about, this sucks. This absolutely sucks. I'm not happy about this. Maybe I'm going to cry about this in 5 minutes. But right now, what is the best way to get through this? And what's the goal? So if the goal is, let's do everything and split it as fairly as we can. And, you know, if there's no conflicts with the co-parenting and the children can go back and forth, you want to look at what's best for the kids and how to most simply get there. And the challenge is, and I tell people to visualize kind of pulling out the emotional components versus the real components.
Right.
Because we can react in anger and it really just, it muddies everything. We can react in a need to punish someone else for the pain they've caused us. There's time to process that later. You're needing to get through this moment now. So what are the basic, how can you make this as simple and clear? And I'll be honest, some people don't love to hear that, because there is part of a lot of us where we want there to be retribution or, you know, punishment.
But living in that just creates more of that. Would you agree?
100%. Yes. I mean, I think the only way to move forward is to move through. And for a time, you have to move through together in order to get to the other side. That is the most craziest riddle I've ever spoken, but
yeah, but I get it.
You get it, right? And so sometimes you have to separate a little bit so that you can get through the process in a way that you represent yourself and your needs and your children's needs if you have children, and allow your ex-spouse to get through it as well. Now, we're not talking about high conflict experiences right now. We're talking about pain, loss, grief. When you get into the very high conflict relationships where there are, I hate to throw around the word, you know, everyone says narcissist. Everyone believes everyone's a narcissist. Yeah, it is. It is. But when you're dealing with, we'll just say high conflict, then there are more things to consider as well, as far as how do I remain calm and remain composed in a way that is representative of how I want this to go. You have no more control of where you are. You are where you are. It happened because it happened the way it did. And so now you're here to deal with how to move forward.
That makes a lot of sense. And thank you for the valuable tip and tactic that you shared with us just a moment ago with the tapping, and then obviously your information surrounding that. But there's a lot more, right? Like, you have this whole kind of process that you bring people through that really helps them to get in a grounded state, stand up for themselves, feel confident, walk into a room with their head high, that kind of thing, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. There is, it is really all about the deeper work. It's all about understanding how we react and why, and how we can shift that. So it's the subconscious reprogramming. It's the identity level reprogramming. We create these beliefs about ourselves and these identities, and we need to identify which ones we need to shift and shift them, literally rewiring them at a subconscious level so that we are responding differently. Yeah, it's definitely much deeper. It's targeted coaching and subconscious rewiring, we'll say. It's the primary basis of the work.
And it sounds to me, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like the best time to connect with you to start this, because it sounds like it's a good amount of inner work, is like right away. Like, don't hesitate. Don't go through the motions and get to the mediator, get to the attorney, get to the table without having this on your side. It sounds like it is incredibly beneficial. I mean, I know how things go for me when I approach it in a confident, calm way versus when I'm kind of, you know, my cheese is off my cracker kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I know the difference.
I know. And I think a lot of times we think, how could we even get to that space? Like, this is just a, you know, craziness right now. And how am I going to even get to a place of calm and confidence? That sounds insane. Yeah. And I will say, emotional chaos derails legal strategy.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
The more we can prepare and regulate for the moment, and it isn't about, you know, having the best response. I don't coach people on how to respond in court. That's what your lawyer prepares you for. I coach you on how to emotionally and mentally stay grounded in these high stress moments so that you don't overshare, overspeak, lose your voice, panic, cry. We can stay in a more controlled space. Yeah. I do have a program that I work with people for the sake of creating a container that is a 5-week, pretty intensive 5-week program where it's a session every week. We have a Zoom or in-person session every week, and then I provide Voxer support between sessions, which is an app that I use that provides voice and text abilities. And I do that because the feedback that I have consistently gotten from lawyers that I've worked with is, you know, it's such an emotional, volatile time. The clients sometimes use the lawyers as therapists, where they want to call and say, but you need to know this and you need to know this. And the reality is, the law is the law, and your lawyer knows exactly what they need to do based on the situation. You may need to process something a little bit differently. Again, I'm not a therapist, so I'm not doing the therapy aspect of it. But if we need to review an interaction or you know, to maybe tweak the way we approach something, that's where I come in, and I'm available through Voxer support for those 5 weeks. And people have found that very, very helpful. They don't, and it that support between sessions creates another safety net where they're seen and they're heard.
And that's really the biggest thing that I have found in my years, is being seen and heard makes a big, giant difference in your confidence level, and your confidence level makes a big, giant difference in how you show up. So I love that. And thank you again for supporting those out there as you do. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for pouring your heart and soul into that. Can I have your information, like how people can contact you in the show notes, but is there anything before we say goodbye that you wish to say or wish to share? You got anything special coming up, anything like that?
I would love to share that, or something that I wish that I knew before I went into mediation and potentially court, that we were able to avert that. I wish that I knew that emotional preparation is not optional. That really, if you want to show up as your best self, I suppose I'll say, emotional preparation is ideal. So that's how I'd say people can find me at JeanineTripodi.com, and they can go directly to these pages with JeanineTripodi.com/law.
And you have your own podcast too, right?
I do. Babe, Take a Seat. Yeah.
Awesome. So guys, check her out. I will, like I mentioned, I have the links in the show notes where you can easily check her out and check out Babe, Take a Seat. I've got to take a seat sometime on that show.
Yes, you do. I know. We had it, and then we lost the date, but yeah, I'll reach out to you.
Awesome. Life is life. That's what happens. Thank you again, Jeanine. It's been amazing talking with you. We hope to see you back again. As you guys know, Jeanine and I kind of have some things in common, where I also specialize in couples that are divorcing as well, in a different way, but I do. And so we connected over that topic, and I've loved the connection. So thank you again, Jeanine. If you guys want to check out any of our previous episodes, if you want to catch Janine's last episode, then over on our YouTube channel, it is at MOMnation USA. That's our handle. scroll down just a little ways. You will see the bright red Live and Learn playlist. There you can catch it and the rest of our previous episodes. Or if you prefer to listen, maybe you hike a lot, bike a lot, go out and walk in nature to ground yourself a lot, right, Jeanine? Then on your favorite podcast platform, do a quick search for MOMnation Talk Radio. There you'll find us. Please download, like, follow, set the little bell for notifications. You'll never miss a beat. And we will see you next time. Thank you.